Thanks. No, it's not really a hint, it's just a number, and it's probably too much for this session. So I will show some features with a full demo, and other, I will be very fast on them. The idea is that I show features that are not new, that are not with options, different edition, anything. So really the basic features, but that we use every day, and that saves our database. About me, what's new? I'm back at DBI services in the consulting world. And just a word on DBI services. Well, you know, because they also sponsor this event. Basically, we work with customers in Switzerland, but we do also remote work for everything: trainings, consulting, license, audit. So I like to work from home. I appreciate that this time. So I would like to find more customers remote for that. Now, the topic for this presentation, I suppose you all have already seen this DB ranking engine. It's about the popularity of databases. And of course, everybody knows that open source databases are more and more popular. But I think that it's not completely fair to rely on that, because new databases implement a lot of new features, and we talk about it. Those features may exist in commercial databases like Oracle for years. And of course, we do not talk a lot about the features that were there in Oracle 7. So if you look at the popularity, you probably miss the most important features in Oracle database. The idea of this presentation is to compensate that and show which features are there for a long time, and you may miss if you leave Oracle, because maybe you see the name in other databases, but they are not really the same feature. Just one word about this DB ranking engine. There are two things I don't like with it. First, this is about popularity. So keep in mind, this doesn't mean that those databases on the top are the best ones for your data. It's just people talk about it, which means that if a database is growing there are good chances that people will talk about it more and more, and then it will grow again. This is the exponential effect, self-induced effect of those graphs. And the second thing I don't really like is the logarithmic scale. I don't know if you have seen that when the first time you have seen this graph. It looks like Postgres or MongoDB are reaching Oracle, MySQL, and Microsoft SQL Server, but they are just at half of their popularity here because of the logarithmic scale. So that's the reason for this presentation, just show the features that are there in Oracle and maybe not there in other databases. I will compare a lot with Postgres, just because I like Postgres and I know Postgres, but basically I'm comparing the old commercial databases with the new open source that are raising there. And 19 features, I decided to take 19 features, and that's really too much for a presentation. We will start at very simple things. We will start with select, insert, update. Of course, they exist in all databases, but not really in the same flavor. And for the select, what we have in Oracle, we have log-free select, which means that I can query, do reporting without blocking anything. And I will start a demo about that to show you how far it goes when we say log-free. So in this demo screen, I'm starting SQL Plus on the bottom. And because I will query a very short table, I will page it with those old page size poson in order to query, but fetch only few rows at a time. So here, my query is running, and I just fetched a few rows, but the cursor is still there executing. And at the same time, on the other screen, I will verify that I have absolutely no lock on this table while I'm querying it. So first, let's check my SQL statement from $SQL. I can see one execution. This one is currently executing. 3 fetches, 5 rows processed, which means that SQL Plus has fetched 5 rows, only 3 displayed there, but 2 in the buffer. And no end of fetch. I am currently in the cursor, and nothing is locked in locked objects, which means that I can do anything on it because there are no locks. I can update it. Here I update all the rows while my select is running. And of course, I can commit that. I can query the values with my committed information. I updated the commission for everybody. So I'm really doing some modifications while someone is doing reporting, long reports there. The select is log-free, and the select also can read old versions. This is something that you find in Oracle, that you find in Postgres, but not in all databases. For example, here I can see the previous version of one row and my modification that I did there. So I have 2 versions. And what happens is that the other session will see only the old version. So checking, I'm still in the same state for my select. I'm going now to fetch more rows from there. And you can see that I'm reading the old version. Because my query started before the other update, I must read the other, the previous version of it to be consistent. Because I started to fetch some rows where the commission was not updated, so I must continue with that. And that's the magic of selects in Oracle. You can read something consistent without any lock. And without any lock means, of course, I can do update as I did it, but I can also do some DML. Here, I'm doing a move, alter table move, reorganization without any problem because I have no lock. And just to show you how far it goes, I will drop the table and continue to fetch from it on the other screen. You see, I come back. I still have my select running there. I see the rows processed, already fetched, still not the end of fetch. And my table is dropped because this select is reading something from the past for consistent reason. This has nothing to do with the recycle bin. I can purge the recycle bin and continue that. That's the power of log-free select that we have there. Of course, I'm not showing that to tell you that you can drop tables in production immediately without any problem with selects. I'm doing that just to show you how far it goes when Oracle says no lock, it's really no lock. Postgres has something similar, but there are still some locks. You cannot drop the table while you read it, and you cannot do, for example, a full vacuum on it or something like that. So that's the select, and that means that you can do your reporting, you can do your real-time BI on the operational database. Of course, it's not mandatory. It's always better to do that on another database. But if you have some analytics to do real time, you can run them on your database, of course, with some resource management and everything to control it. Second feature, insert. Again, that's something usual. Exists in all databases, but basically, only commercial databases have what they call fast load or direct path insert in Oracle, where you can load the bulk of data, not inserting row by row, but in bulk with blocks that are pre-built and then minimal undo, minimal redo. That's useful, of course, for data warehouses, but one day you will have migration, reorganization, and being able to do that fast is another feature that is really useful and that you cannot find elsewhere. So maybe larger outage on another database if you leave Oracle, things that you can do very fast with Oracle. Third feature, now update. Again, update is everywhere on all databases, but I will show you an example in a demo showing you that with Postgres, actually the update is managed as insert plus delete, which has not the same performance. Let me drop the demo table. I have no demo table, perfect. So going on the top, I will create a demo table, connect to the user, insert some rows there, 10,000 of rows. Let's check the size. I have 12 megabytes for the table and very small index. I'm setting here just an alias on a SQL CL, the SQL Dev command line, just to get some statistics that are interesting on my session. So when I call my stats, I just see those statistics. The demo table, here is the DDL, here is the structure. And I connect again just to reset the $mystats view. I check the stats, so nearly 0 because I'm just starting my session. And I will update the flag. I have a flag that was no, and I update it to yes on all rows. And I check that the size of my table has not changed because Oracle does in-place update. I'm changing yes, no, I'm changing no n by y, and this takes 1 byte. The table is still the same size. Now I will do the same with Postgres to show you what's really different in the implementation of update, creating a similar table, connecting there, inserting similar rows with an n flag, and some strange query to see the size. This is similar. I had 12 megabytes, 11 here, no problem. PCT3 may be different. And I have a query here that I will use to check the redo size. The redo size I had with Oracle was there. Sorry, redo size there, 4 megabytes, and we will see the redo size in Postgres. Redo is called wall write ahead logging in Postgres. Doing the update, checking the size of redo, I see that my update has generated 12 megabytes of redo, which is the whole size of the table. With Oracle, I had only 4 megabytes. I changed only 1 byte in each row. And here in Postgres, actually, I changed all the rows. Doing an analyze to check the size of my table, the size of the table has doubled. And that's the problem with Postgres that doesn't implement an in-place update, but it is implemented as a delete and an insert. And then the size of the table increases a lot, and the redo generated, the wall, is also bigger, which is a problem for performance, maybe a problem for physical or logical replication. Now checking the, I anticipate on the next slide and the next feature. I'm checking now the execution plan for the update. And I did here an update on the flag only. and I have an index on the flag. Sorry, I set the flag to no, as in the beginning, to start again. I select the n column, and I have an index on this column, which means that I can do an index-only scan. We will see in a vehicle the same. When I have everything in the index, I can read the index only because all the columns are in the index. Except that if I look at the number of buffers, I have a lot of buffers here, and I can see heap fetches, which means that actually what was an index-only scan had to go to the table. I do the same in a vehicle where I have an index-only scan. It's even a full scan there. This scans only the table. The reason is that, again, in the way the MVCC, the non-blocking select are implemented, sometimes the index is not sufficient, and Postgres has to read the table to see if there are changes in the table, even for an index-only scan. And why is this very important? So that's the feature about index-only access and true index-only access. What is this very important? We usually have two kinds of access to a table. If we want only few rows, then index access is okay. Index access plus accessing to the table rows by row ID. If we need more and more rows and a lot of rows from the table, then this cost is very expensive. Better to do a full scan. Full scan does not depend on the number of rows we want. It reads the whole table. The problem comes when we are just in the middle. If I want to query 1,000 or 10,000 rows, probably the index access will be too slow because I have to read the rows from the table 1,000 or 10,000 times, and the full table scan will be too large. And this is where in Oracle, we add the column to the index to have an index-only access. And this increases with the number of rows we want, but not in the same proportion because we do not have to go to the table for each row. And this is something that you don't have in all databases. We have seen that Postgres has it, but depending on the concurrent changes, it cannot be used completely. Again, a feature that is very interesting in Oracle. Even if you see the same name in other databases, just check the number of blocks that are read from that. No need to reorg, it's the same idea. Oracle is really designed to maintain the rows in the block ready to be queried. In most of other databases, you insert, update the rows, and it's optimized for this insert. And then, because when you come to the life cycle of the rows where it's mostly queries, you need to reorg, rebuild indexes, do something, vacuum, to get the physical organization optimized for queries. Oracle, in most of the cases, organizes the inserts in table and index so that query are immediately optimal. There are very few cases where you need to do something on the index and do something can be rebuilt in very rare case. It can be Coalish, which is online, a lot of things like that. Other databases need to reorg the indexes, the table, or even vacuum in the case of Postgres. That's again something that you have with Oracle, where you can do queries on your operational database and everything is optimal there. That doesn't mean that you cannot move out of Oracle if you want to or need to, but you need to take care that it's not so easy. You will have to plan some maintenance job depending on the life cycle of the rows in the table or the partitions. That was no need to reorg. Now cursor sharing. So Chris Antonini explained a lot about what a vehicle does with cursors. And I'm just saying here that basically these things are available in commercial databases and not in open source databases. MySQL Postgres will compile each statement executed. They don't have a shared pool that tries to keep the execution plan optimized and reuse it for other queries. And there are two problems with that. First, compiling every execution. It's like compiling a program for each execution. This is CPU intensive, so takes time and CPU. And the other problem also is that because of this time, it limits the work that we want the optimizer to do. Oracle, through the version, has implemented a lot of transformations. They take time, they take CPU cycle, and they can do that because we do not have to do that for each execution. When you don't have a shared pool, when you do not share the cursor, you need to limit what can be done in the optimization. And so again, that's something to take care when moving in other database. Partitioning, I mentioned partitioning here. You can see partitioning in a lot of databases. Postgres has introduced partitioning in past versions, but do not just stay at the title by thinking that all partitioning is the same. Here is a few features that comes with partitioning that has been implemented in Oracle 7, I think, or I started to use it in 8. Global indexes is not something that you find in all databases that are doing partitioning. There are online moves, there are a lot of things. So if you compare, just do not stop the comparison at Oracle has partitioning, I have a partitioning in the alternative, then I can go to the alternative. Really look at what you use there and what you will miss. Optimizer feature enable. I think that I don't know any software doing this kind of thing. You can run the latest version of Oracle with any previous version of the optimizer, which means that you can upgrade for support or security reason and prevent most of the regression in execution plans by running the optimizer in a previous version, at least for a few weeks in order to fix something. To show you that, I have prepared the demo. So first, here are the documented parameters about the optimizer. There are parameters everywhere. I will set optimizer feature enable to something that does not exist. This is just my way to see the different accepted value. So I'm in 19C here, and I can run the optimizer as of any of those versions. And this happens quite often where you upgrade and you have regression in execution plan in a few queries. And then before fixing it, just because you have a problem in production, you just set the optimizer version to the previous version, and production works, and then you can start to trace and understand the problem. And in order to show you how far it goes, I will use a tool from Mauro Pagano, Pathfinder. The idea of this tool, I will just start it and explain while it is running. The idea of this tool is, for example, you have a query. You are in 11G, you upgrade to 19C, and everything is better except one query that is very long. What you do immediately, you set the optimizer feature enable to 11G so that production can be okay. And then you need to understand which feature between 11G and 19C causes a problem. And this tool tries every combination of parameters, every value of the parameters that control the different fixes or enhancements that have been made in the optimizer. Every time the Oracle development team changes something in the optimizer to fix a bug or to implement something new, they add a flag with it. And optimizer feature enable is just a set of the features that are as of a specific version. So I'm running that here just to show you the many flags that are behind. Of course, it probably makes the Oracle code very complex, but this is what saves us in upgrades, saves us from regressions. And you can upgrade, get the latest security fix without taking risks in the execution plans. Next feature, ints. Of course, the goal is not to put ints everywhere, but when you go to troubleshoot something in the execution plan, you want to understand how the optimizer works, you need ints. And I'm mentioning that because in Postgres, for example, you do not have ints. There is an extension, but very limited. And the other nice thing with ints, as you have seen in the previous presentation, you can use ints to force an execution plan and do that automatically with SQL plan management, SQL plan baselines. Again, that's something that is very useful when you upgrade. You fix all the execution plan, you upgrade, and then one by one, or with the involved task, you can really upgrade each statement. Crash and media recovery. All databases implement something because they are ACID, and durability means that you cannot lose the committed transactions. But what I know is that when I see an Oracle instance crash, I restart it and I do not feel the need to check for corruption, except if I really have a reason, a special error message or something like that. But I know that Oracle recovery is completely reliable. Most of my colleagues working on other databases, after a server or instance crash, they check for corruption. Oracle has always been very reliable on that. And that's something that is also very important if you care about your data. Many people, I'm sure that even Oracle developers always restart their instance with a startup force or shutdown abort. Do not do that in production, but it works. Recovery is nearly 100% reliable. And talking about recovery, we have RMAN in Oracle. Again, all databases can do backups and have some tools to do backups. But I will show you how RMAN is automated. So let me stop this Pathfinder, which was just there as an example, and look at my database. I think I will not need the lower pane, so let me increase that. So here I'm just listing the data files that I have, and I will corrupt one of them. This is the checksum for everything that is system, double space, and here I'm doing something DD, putting some random stuff in the file. So I corrupt them. They have not the same checksum, just to be sure. And now, in addition to that, I will crash my instance. So this is a situation where I have a problem in the data file, my instance crashes, and then I try to start it. And of course, I will have a problem. Instance crash, the recovery is automatic. If there is something on the file, we have something to do. And usually with other databases, we have to understand what happened, which file we need to restore, from where to restore it. And with RMAN, RMAN has a repository in the control file or an external repository and knows exactly what it has to do. I'm just realizing that I'm not sure that I did a backup before, but I have a plan before that. Don't worry. So if I try to open my PDBs there, because the system table space is corrupt, I cannot. And now I will show you, I don't know if you probably all know about RMAN, but I don't know if you know the recovery advisor. 3 commands to remember. List failure. The failure has been detected. I have a problem in a system data file. Advise failure. Tell me what to do. I don't have myself to check where to restore the backup from. And here, yeah. So I mentioned that I forgot to do a backup before, but I have a standby database in DataGuard there. And then it suggests me to take the data file from the standby. And the important thing, RMAN ensures me that I will have no data loss at all. Then running the failure, do I agree with what will be done? Yes. Data file offline, restore from service, automatically connecting to the standby database to get the data file there. And you will see that this works. Of course, not all recovery cases are covered by the recovery advisor, but very useful to guide you in recovery. And that's something I don't know any database which has this level of automatism. Just checking that now I can open my PDBs. And I didn't lie about the possibilities of RMAN. Yeah, I connect Scott Tiger to the PDB that has had a problem. Okay, looking at the time, I have 10 minutes left if I'm counting correctly, and feature 11. Okay, now you will be surprised that I have listed the support as something that you will miss if you leave Oracle. I'm not talking about opening OSR, waiting, uploading those many log files that are irrelevant just because they ask you, and waiting and waiting and waiting. The big value of Oracle support is the knowledge base, because they have a lot of customers which probably encountered issues before you, and they have a lot of people at support and writing summaries of the issues. And most of the time, when you encounter an issue, just with the error message or a bit of context, and with the many troubleshooting tools that we have, you will be able to find a Moss note telling you what is the problem, what you can check to be sure that this is the problem, like the call stack or something like that, and maybe a workaround, a patch, and a solution, or at least a workaround. And that's very important. If you go to open source, you will not have this level of support. You will have to read long list of mailing lists. You will have to go to Stack Overflow through answers that are good or not. Here you have a support, and all the nodes are validated by engineers, by the developers, so you can trust them more than Stack Overflow, of course. So think about the support, not only about opening authors, but all the information we have to solve a problem when we encounter one. Wait events, or DB time, which is wait events plus the time spent in the database in general. Oracle is probably the best instrumented database. Everything that is done in the database is instrumented, which means you know the time spent on it, plus a lot of statistics. And this information, time spent in CPU or in I/O or in network calls or in any system call, you can query them, see them in traces, query them from sampling, hash, or get cumulative values from the dollar views. And that, again, that's something that you will find in other databases. Postgres has wait events. You can query them in PG stat activity, but you just see the wait event. So you can sample on them, but you will not have a count, the wait count that you have in Oracle, and you don't have the time. So I can know that my application is spending a lot of time on I/O, but I cannot know the average I/O time, for example, from those statistics. Oracle instrumentation is something that is really helpful for troubleshooting any issue. Issue from your SQL statements, or issue from Oracle itself, or issue from your storage system. And at least with those numbers, you know exactly where the problem is. Upgrades and migration, I will go fast on it. You have many possibilities for upgrades and migration. And the important thing also, you can upgrade a database in place without touching any of your data, which means that the upgrade time do not depend on the size of your database. It touches only the dictionary, and it touches the whole dictionary. As a comparison, with open source database, you often try to do your upgrades with an export import. If you can do it in place, for example, in Postgres, but it will not touch the whole dictionary. I think you have to gather statistics afterwards because they are lost and things like that. With Oracle, you really can do in-place updates, and you need to if you have terabytes of database. And for migration, you have also transportable table space, where you move the data physically. Oracle is multi-platform, and that's also a big thing if you compare with some other databases, even if now SQL Server also works in Linux. And just as an example, and for the fun, here are some platforms that were supported for Oracle 7, which do not exist anymore today, but there are probably a lot of applications written on those platforms and still running today on modern platforms. It's still the case today, even if you have some features that are available only on Oracle platforms, you can move, I mean, the PL/SQL can run on any supported platform from Oracle. Materialized view, again, if you see another database which support materialized view, do not stop just there thinking that you will be able to do the same thing. Materialized view in Oracle have a long history and features, new features every new version with transparent optimization, like query rewrite. You just query the base table, and the optimizer go to the materialized view if it helps, and the refresh also, it can be refreshed immediately. I have to go fast on those ones. Here are a few features that are not used every day, but one day you will have someone dropping a table or doing some mistake, and Flashback features will help you to get it back very fast. You can live without it, but think about the day you will need it and how much time and money you will save with those features. DataGuard, so this is Enterprise Edition, but DataGuard is again standby database. You find that in all databases, but with DataGuard, you can do a switchover, reverse the role, and even automatically. So it's really HA in a few minutes. And because I wanted to list 19 features, but that's too much, the 19 is a lot of features I like. So pick the one you want. I usually mention that my preferred is online operation to save my weekends, but today we are all working from home with the family at home. So working on weekend or on Monday doesn't make a big difference for me. Today, my favorite one will be CMAN, and the next session with Flora and Martin will show you nice things that you can do with CMAN. Few minutes left. The big question now is all those features that are specific to Oracle and that you don't have in other databases. I often hear people telling me, I don't want to use them because they are Oracle specific. And then if one day I move, I will have to find another solution. And for me, it's really a bad decision. First, you pay for Oracle today. So use what saves your time and money now. If you think you will move out in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, first, those features may exist at that time in other databases. So today, use them and just be prepared for a move. Know the cost of it. And the other important thing here is that if your Oracle sales know that you have a plan to move and you know exactly the cost of it, they will probably give you enough discount and you will probably stay on Oracle, which will be easier for you. If they think that you are locked in, then it will be difficult. So big recommendation here, use all those features, just evaluate the cost if you have to quit them. Quick core message before questions. Just let me try to find the question and answer thing. I have no idea where it is. Okay, just doing my core message and I will try to find the Q&A after that. So when you compare the feature, do not stop at the name of the features. Compare really what is behind, like partitioning, materialized view. Do not stop at popular buzz. People talk about it because it's cool, because it's new, and probably not because it saves their life one day in the past when they dropped a table in production. And do not stop at development features. Today, development is taking the decisions, but there are a lot of features that are useful during the life cycle of the database, upgrades and migrations, for example. Okay, taking the questions now. Only 2 questions. One is a link to YouTube, which is probably the link to the demos. I have no idea. And one is about vacuum online on Postgres. Yes, you can vacuum without taking logs, but it takes a lot of resource. And if you have concurrent activity, it has to skip the blocks. So this presentation is not about Postgres, but vacuum is still a problem, less and less through the version, but vacuum is still a problem in Postgres. And it's also about predictability of performance. If you need to wait for some vacuum to get correct query performance, then it's difficult to predict that. I see another question about Tibero. I've written a blog post about it recently. all these 19 features still applicable, I didn't check exactly. Tibero has a good level of compatibility, and I would say that most of them probably yes. But Tibero is still a proprietary solution, and today people who think to moving to another database are often thinking about open source. Is it easy to migrate from PostgreSQL to Oracle and vice versa? The answer is it depends. If you have only tables and indexes and they do not demand big things in performance, then probably yes. If you have tons of PL/SQL packages, that will be more difficult. But the big question is, do you really want to move between databases or just use the database you have and optimize it? And I mean also optimize the cost. If you are in Oracle Enterprise Edition and think about moving to open source, check Standard Edition. Maybe it's the solution in the middle, which reduces your cost enough and has a lot of features that you will not find elsewhere. Checking if there is another question. Why didn't you mention encryption and compression? Because I tried to focus on features where I don't need to pay for Enterprise Edition plus options. So of course, transparent encryption is very difficult to replace if you go to another database. Compression as well, but it's also expensive. And people who are in the mood of moving to open source usually are not those who already pay for a lot of options and maybe have a ULA and something like that. Gianni, you stop me when it's done. I see other questions, and if I cannot take them, I will answer them.
You still have like 8 minutes to go, so we can take time for now.
Perfect. PL/SQL is also a strong argument. Yes, it is. Except that it's not the argument that people like to hear today because they don't want a proprietary language. I mean, PL/SQL is a strong argument to stay in Oracle because you can run procedural code with managed dependency with the objects, and you can even compile it and deploy it online and anything. So it's a strong argument to stay in Oracle, but it's also the strong argument for people who think that they will be locked down in Oracle. And that's also a reason they do not use it, because there are no good alternative elsewhere. Next question, putting aside the 19 feature, which database you will suggest to switch from Oracle to open source database, which is compatible with Oracle PL/SQL? So I take that like the question in the certification. I take the words, I see open source and compatible with Oracle PL/SQL. There are none. There are none of them. You have procedural language in other databases, but nothing compatible. Of course, EDB has some level of compatibility, but you will never take your packages and move them. And while I'm there, the difficult thing when moving to another language is not about rewriting. You can rewrite your PL/SQL in any language. The problem is that your PL/SQL packages have been written during the last years or decades. They have all the company specifications. And who will test that in UAT, that what you have rewritten works exactly the same as before? And who will take the responsibility that your banking software that has been implemented in PL/SQL for 20 years and yet that you rewrite in, let's say, Python, will work exactly the same? And that's the big difficult part. So actually, I know no alternatives, and this is why I would recommend to check how you can optimize the cost of your Oracle database rather than trying to remove all the PL/SQL, and then you will have a lot of problems, and that has a cost as well. But again, it depends. Huh? And last question, what is the single Oracle feature you cannot live without in another database? For example, you mentioned you are also using PostgreSQL. Live without, there are no features I cannot live without. And when I go to a customer, if they want a feasibility study, I will provide several alternatives, but he can choose what he wants. There are nothing that you cannot replace, but you replace it with a cost in development, a cost in operations. So there is nothing that you cannot replace, but there are a few things that are difficult to replace. For example, if you use WAC, because you cannot accept 1 second of downtime, that's difficult to replace, for example. What is the single Oracle feature that you cannot live without? Yeah, that's the same. The cool thing
I guess we are done for now. There are no more questions. It was already quite many questions. So it's definitely a topic that interests people. So Perfect. Thank you very much, Franck.
Thank you very much for the organization.